Let's transition and go to the Browns. I mentioned that there's two questions here. Is he a Hall of Famer if he retires right now? And is this year setting up to be the best of his pro career? McNuggets, you can start. What do you think about the Hall of Fame question?
You want to start with the Hall of Fame question?
Yeah, we might as well.
All right. Just so y'all know, I have numbers galore for y'all today. If you don't like numbers, you're going to hate me today. I'm just going to apologize ahead of time. Taking biases aside.
Right.
Speaking to you, the viewers, if Myles Garrett retired today and never played another down of football in his life, he's not a Hall of Famer. Are we kidding ourselves?
Yeah, no.
It's not even frankly close. His career ranks, as of today, 88th all-time in sacks.
I wouldn't have guessed he was that low.
Tied for 191st all-time in forced fumbles and tied for 105th in tackles for loss.
Yeah.
He's a Browns great as of today, but he is nowhere near a Hall of Famer if he retired. However, he is 1,000,000% on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Through 6 seasons, he has 74.5 career sacks. Only 6 players ever have had more sacks through 6 seasons.
And do you have the list of those
Myles,
players?
Do I have the list? Of course I have the list of players. Are you kidding me?
It's a who's who of pass rushers.
Are you guys ready? Reggie White,
One
95.
of the greats of all time.
DeMarcus Ware with 80. TJ Watt was 77.5. Derek Thomas was 77. Bruce Smith was 76. And JJ Watt was 76.
Those guys are all Hall of Famers or will be.
The only players who have ever had more sacks than Myles Garrett through 6 seasons. And you may be asking, well, where are the other all-time greats rank through 6 seasons? Anthony, let's pull up the graphic with the other all-time greats through 6 seasons, and you will see that Myles Garrett is well ahead of most Hall of Fame defensive ends through 6 seasons. How about Julius Peppers, 56, Michael Strahan, 47, Jason Taylor, 58. The list goes on and on and on. As of today, Myles Garrett not a Hall of Famer, but he is 1,000,000,000 trillion gajillion% on pace to be a Hall of Famer if he continues at this same rate, or if not even better, which I expect him to be this year for the next couple seasons.
I don't know what a gajillion is, but I co-sign everything you just said.
Thank you.
So are we going to get any dissension here at all? G. Bush, if we're going to, it's going to come from you.
No, he's not a Hall of Fame. See, I try to look at it differently. If he's going to do the numbers, I'm going to look at it through the eye test, right? Now, Myles Garrett is dominant when it comes to pass rushing, right? For the Browns, it's so difficult to watch it because he could be way better if he actually had a coach that was willing to put him in positions to get easier sacks.
Hopefully we have that now.
Hopefully we got that. 2, another defensive end or defensive tackles that kind of garner any sort of attention from offensive coordinators, right? He has not played with somebody that you had to double or is going to be a wrecking ball opposite of
when
him.
he got Clowney was at the tail end of his career.
Yes. And I think Clowney is washed. I think Clowney's out of here.
He hasn't been signed. So not just you, I think the rest of the league is looking at Clowney as a wash.
He hurt himself with his comments
Agreed.
at the end of the season, towards the end of the season.
And his actions. Like, what do you mean you're only going to go on 3rd down? That seems crazy. But I'll say when you look at Myles Garrett, he does not have a Defensive Player of the Year award. That would bolster a lot, right? Mm-hmm. That would help him tremendously because when you're a Defensive Player of the Year, it kind of puts you on a different level,
sure.
right? And he does not have that so far. And he does. I look at the TFLs, right? The TFLs for me is something that you can get put in a place where not only are you a great pass rusher, but are you getting in the backfield? Are you playing the run? And what are your tackles for loss look like? I think that's one of the missing parts of Myles Garrett's game. Like, you can always say he's going to show up, he's going to give you anywhere from 12 to 16 sacks. That's what I would like to see, that number in the 20s. But one of the areas that I would love to see is you be able to dominate in 2 different facets. J.J. Watt was able to do that by getting deflections and tip passes.
Right.
I think one year he had 25 deflections, which is devastating. On 3rd down, you get the ball knocked down in July.
It's almost as good as a sack.
It is.
Because it leads to a punt.
It's infuriating. Because at least if you let him throw the ball, I got a chance for my receiver to catch the ball and do some things. But he was dominant in that area. He was dominant as a pass rusher. And he was just disruptive. I would just like to see more disruptiveness. But as McNugget said, with all those things being said, he is on a fast trajectory. The only player on that list, Reggie White at 90 sacks, which was crazy.
Absurd.
Yeah. I think he had 95.
He had 95. And also,
crazy.
some guys I missed on the Lawrence Taylor. Guess how many sacks he had through 6 seasons? Lawrence Taylor, arguably the best pass rusher of all
40s?
time. No, he had 73.5. One fewer than Myles Garrett. But still, fewer than Myles Garrett. Aaron Donald, 72. Cameron Wake, 63. Von Miller, 73.5. You look at all the historical pass rushers, like I said, only 6 players in the history of the NFL have more sacks than 6
I would say that not only
Myles
is he on a
Garrett.
trajectory for the Hall of Fame, because I think he clearly is, I think he's on a trajectory to be a first ballot Hall of Famer,
Yep.
and I also think he's on a trajectory to be, when he's all said and done, listed in the names of the greats that we just put out there.
Yep.
I think when it's all said and done, he has a chance to be top 5. I think he's certainly going to be top 10. Here's my knock on Myles Garrett, and I almost feel like I'm looking at the beautifully restored car, and I'm pointing out the nick in the paint on the underbody and the slight blemish on the seat. Because other than that, it's so picture-perfect beautiful. But there are blemishes, and the blemishes are the one-dimensional. He tends to be one-dimensional. He does need to do something else at an elite level, whether that's knocking down passes. I think his strip sacks and his fumbles, I think he's getting elite in that area.
He's been getting better as his career's progressed.
Here's my biggest knock on him. There are still too many times when I have to check, is he in the game? Mm-hmm. Is he playing right now? I haven't seen anything from 95. And when I watch, particularly the 2 guys in the game right now that really jump off at me, when TJ Watt is on the field, you know it, every member of the other team knows it, and every fan watching the game knows he's on the field. He doesn't tend to have these lapses, these stretches of a quarter and a half or 2 quarters where he's at least making his presence felt. And sometimes when you look at the stat sheet after a game, you're like, wow, Myles didn't play. No tackles, no sacks, no TF, nothing. You know, I just need a Hall of Fame player to constantly be a presence on the field.
There was the Week 3 game against Pittsburgh last year where Myles Garrett had, I believe, 2 tackles, no sacks, no tackles for loss, but like a 94 PFF grade.
Yeah, I remember that. We talked about it on the show.
We talked about it on the show, and they won. It was the Thursday night football game. They won the game, so we were ecstatic. And I tweeted at one point, I was like, hey, where's Myles Garrett? And then it kind of blew up. People were like, well, he's getting double, triple teamed. And
he always does, but the greats always do.
And that is fair. And PFF, like, I don't know I know what they tell us, how they grade these players. I'm not sitting in a room watching them, knowing what Myles Garrett's defensive assignment was, and I'm not exactly sure where he was supposed to be. G could talk a lot better than I can on the defensive line assignments, especially as a defensive end, and when you're getting double teamed, what you're really supposed to do. But he always grades out well on PFF, and those guys, as much as I think I'm a genius, like, those guys know football, and their grades aren't the end-all, be-all of everything. But when he gets a 94 grade, even though his name hasn't been called and he only has 2 tackles, I feel like he has to be doing something more than meets the casual eye. And not saying you have a casual eye.
He is. No, I do have a casual eye. I mean, all of us do.
But he has to be doing something more than what we see from a viewer's perspective watching on TV.
I want to get G's comments on the PFF rush grade, the rush defense grade. If you could throw that back up again.
He had a 93.5 pass grade. It was the highest in football last year.
But the run grade
and his run grade was in the 64s, which was pretty average for the record, pretty average in context.
Sure, when you're geared to get after the quarterback, guys are going to run by you. But should that G. Bush be higher than where it is?
Well, to speak a little bit to the PFF grades, right? When you look at the 92.5 overall, usually they have a plus-minus system when you're getting graded by coaches or you're getting graded by anybody who's watching you play. So they're going to give you a point if did you do your assignment, right? So if you're supposed to be in C-gap, were you in C-gap? Did you get moved off the ball? Did you get blocked and did you let somebody get to the next level? If you stay in your gap, you don't get blown off the ball, they give you a plus for that. Okay, did you get penetrations? Even if you got blocked by 2 or 3 people, did you get penetration? Did you at least make the ball bounce somewhere else, even if you don't make the tackle? And then the big thing is if you have to allocate 2 resources to block Myles Garrett, you also get a plus because that's one less player that you have to block.
So even before the ball snapped, he's kind of in plus territory because he's double teamed or chipped.
There it is.
Is it like a point guard who could have 10 assists if everyone makes their shots, but may leave a game with 3 assists because guys went 3 of 10? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, because here, as a pass rusher, Myles Garrett literally has about, I would say, between 5 and 10 opportunities to get sacks a game, right? And those are when a quarterback holds the ball more than a very quick amount of time, 2.5 seconds. PFF also has that. If you get pressure within 2.5 seconds and the quarterback throws the ball and nothing happens, you get an extra credit point for that too, because you're making him throw the ball quickly. So you can do all of these things, right? You can be in your gap, you can put your hands up, you can have all these pluses, but when you look at the stat sheet, it doesn't say anything because
it's not showing up.
It's not showing up.
Yeah.
It's difficult for you to flash. And so when he does flash, and he does get sacks after being double teamed, now his grade is off the charts because now you got a sack and you got double teamed. So that's why sometimes things like that happen when you look at the overall grades. But to your point, the run grade is at 68% because you're not affecting that play. You're not like there should be never a time where Myles Garrett lets somebody get outside of him, right?
For context, what's T.J. Watt's PFF run grade? Just for context.
Earl would have to look that up. Right?
Okay, Earl, if you get that, let us know. I'm not sure what it was. Micah Parsons. You know, he's another guy that I look at that I never have to. He's never invisible to me.
Yeah.
When Micah's on the field, when TJ's on the field, Aaron Donald I think Aaron Donald has set the new bar.
Yeah, when you watch Aaron Donald as a defensive lineman, he's undersized inside. But the way Aaron Donald plays the run and the pass, he did it in a way that was unique because he's really not trying to engage with you. Like, he's just like, oh, I'm quick enough, I can run around you, and I can run underneath you.
You can get off blocks.
And I can get off blocks, I can shed. So you don't know what Aaron Donald's going to do.
Right.
And they give him a two-way go a lot of times to maximize that. And now he can go left or right. So now you're guessing. Sometimes, and we have to take in consideration, defensive coordinators, I used to be defensive coordinators' nightmares because I wasn't going to just be in my gap all the time like that. Like, because
you were the OBJ of defensive linemen.
Yeah, they'd be like, listen, if you make that tackle, you better make that tackle because you were supposed to be in their gap. I'm like, well, he was running in B. I got it. I can spill off late and make that. They're like, no, that's not what we do. What we doing?
Yeah.
Anthony, you got the grades?
Yeah, for context, TJ is 77.1, and then Parsons is 73.2.
Okay, so those are TJ's significantly better.
Mm-hmm.
Micah, who is more of a pass rusher, I guess, but it's still 73, 5 points higher than Myles Garrett.
I wonder real quick. Because the Browns' rush defense was so bad last year.
I wonder that
if
too.
Everyone got dinged, not dinged, but because the entire unit was horrendous, everyone's grades are just lower than they typically would be.
Probably.
Yeah.
I would assume so.
Yeah. And a lot. Like
Toki and Jordan Elliott and Taven Bryan all had 30s last year in the middle. So.
And sometimes we used to call it hiding people. When you got a team and you're not good, you got to hide people. Like, I know that's the best defensive tackle you got, but you have to do things schematically. Like sometimes coaches have their best performances with whack defenses because it forces them to be creative.
You mean like gimmicked up?
Yeah, gimmicked up. Like, they're like, hey, when we played for OU, we used to have this defense called loop check, right? And we would line up, and basically what we would do is we would turn and run diagonal down the sideline. Like, down the line of scrimmage.
At the snap of the ball?
At the snap of the ball. Everybody. So my job was to be a head up on the tackle, and I had to get to A-gap. Even if they were blocking me, I had to turn and run diagonally, right?
Wow.
Then the nose, he had to run and everybody ran this way. And what happened was they created this thing called the rope-a-dope technique. And our linebacker, his name was Dennis Chukwuemeka. He was a really good linebacker in the MAC. And what they do, they say, you're doing the rope-a-dope technique. What you're going to do is everybody's going to run that way. The ball should never stay front side because everybody on our team is running that way. So the ball has to cut back. And he would stand here, take 2 steps, and then scrape right off the backside.
He's kind of on an island now.
And he's so that guy has to make the tackle.
He's got to make it.
So
he was probably a very good open field tackler.
He was a very good open field tackler. And what they did, they said, we don't have the athletes to play these guys straight up.
Yeah.
And we basically were one of the best teams in the country at stopping the run. It wasn't because we were great. It was because we would do things like, all right, we got one guy. We're going to make sure that you can't block anybody. You're not going to run in front side. So the ball is going to spill.
So you're really forcing them to kick it back the other way.
Yeah. Yes.
And then when they do, there's the gobble up is gonna clean them up every time.
And it's one-on-one, and if he breaks the tackle, he's probably going 45 yards for a touchdown. And if he gets tackled, it looks genius.
And then the adjustment was, we had one of our best players was named Rob Stover. He was a safety at Ohio State, right? So we got him as a transfer. We spot shadow him. So what they would do is say, Chuk, you're going to be right here. Yeah. If the ball does not declare, it has to come back. You're standing there, and they would send the strong safety, Rob Stover, screaming off the edge as if he was blitzing.
Wow.
And so now if Chuk doesn't hit him, you got another leverage player that's already there as well that could clean up the tackle. And people just didn't understand what we were running. They were like, I've never seen this technique. Why are these linemen just getting up running across the field?
It's a pitcher who has a 91-mile-an-hour fastball who has to live off junk.
Yep, that's it.
Essentially lives off junk.
Interesting.